The Archbishop of Canterbury said it is outrageous to describe people who are worried about the impact of migration as racist. Justin Welby said there was a genuine fear of the impact on housing, jobs and the NHS. In his first comments about the EU debate, Justin Welby said a response to the great movement of people was needed at European level. He said the scale of migration is such an enormous challenge that it can only be handled at a European level. But the lack of a Europe-wide solution was deepening the crisis significantly. He also urged the UK to find a way of taking its fair share of the load. Mayor of London Boris Johnson said that leaving the European Union is a win-win for all of us, urging those backing exit to hold our nerve and vote for freedom. Mr. Johnson said the European Union was an anachronism which costs a huge amount of money and subverts our democracy. He insisted there were no downsides from leaving the European Union, joking the only thing we have to fear is fear of itself.
And now, joining me to discuss those comments by the Archbishop of Canterbury, our political commentator Mohammed Ansar, Hector Marchetti from the Conservative think tank The Bow Group, and Mohammed Amin, who's chairman of the Conservative Muslim Forum. Welcome to the programme, all of you. Mohammed Ansar, what do you make of those remarks by the Archbishop of Canterbury?
I'm really disappointed, actually. I've had a soft spot for the Church of England for a long time. I've worked with them regularly on programmes. I've spoken at their events and been really pushing forwards to try and have a closer working relationship and dialogue between interfaith communities, especially British Muslim communities and the Church of England. But I think ever since the Reform and Renewal programme was launched last year, there was this enthusiastic zeal for a modernisation within the church, of almost evangelising within the church. And I think Justin Welby's got this completely wrong. I think on the one hand, you cannot support bombing Syria, which he did. And in fact, I had a friend of mine who's a Christian minister who was in Homs as bombs fell, to support that, and then not to support the refugees and the migrant communities that are coming here, and instead to peddle fear and prejudice. And I'm sorry, Archbishop Welby, it is racist.
OK, Hector, let me bring you into the conversation. Bit disappointing, isn't it, always, when you hear somebody like Justin Welby, whose grandfather was a German Jew who came to this country, settled here successfully. Always disappointing when you hear somebody who's a descendant of an immigrant trying to kick the ladder away for others.
Good afternoon. Well, I think we're all descendants of immigrants in one way or another, but I've read Archbishop Welby's comments. He's mentioned fear as a justifiable concern by which people are concerned about with our public services right now, but he's also brought up the narrative of hope. He's brought up how he feels that Britain should be doing more to address this situation. He's brought up how there should be a visionary debate about what the country will look like and what it can do. There's nothing racist about what he said. There's nothing inflammatory. He is adding to the debate, which for so many years has been shrunk almost by people being afraid to say one thing or the other for fear of reprisal.
You're joking. Surely not. I mean, the current EU campaign is being fought on the basis of a deal which David Cameron did to exclude migrants from benefits in this country. Surely you can't be serious in saying that they're somehow afraid to make comments in the press or to voice their ideas. They're doing it all the time. Half of Europe is being swept by parties that make this their main platform.
Well, I should think that it's an atmosphere which has grown in recent years about what you can and can't say and opinions being dismissed. I think that the Archbishop has nothing wrong to say here. I believe that what he's doing is really promoting the cause of migrants with his comments. OK.
Mohammed Amin, surely even if you agree with the things that Justin Welby did say, there's something else that he should have said, which is that some people who attack migrants are racists and they should be opposed. And he didn't say that.
I've also read Justin Welby's comments. And a few years ago, when I was doing telephone canvassing, it became very clear to me that people from all kinds of ethnic backgrounds are concerned about the levels of immigration. And that's why he said, quite rightly, that it is not racist to be concerned about the levels of immigration, about the impact on schools, on the health service.
Well, that wasn't my question, Mohammed Amin. My question was this, that some people do use that argument in a racist way and are racists, and they should be condemned, and Justin Welby didn't do that.
You cannot say everything in an interview. You might as well say that why didn't he, complain about global warming at the same time?
Well, no, it's related directly to the content of it. He said that some people who have this fear aren't racist. He should surely have said that some people play on this and are racist.
By definition, if he says that some people are not racist, he is accepting that some people are racist. Otherwise, he would have said that every person who raises it is not racist.
Mohammed Ansari, let me just put this question to you. We read of an increasing number of racist attacks on Muslims, attacks on migrants. Do you think the victims of those will feel reassured or a little bit more afraid after they read what Justin Welby has said?
I think the great and the greatest part of the argument for having an established church in this country is that it is a benevolent force for all communities in this country. And I think where Justin Welby's got this wrong is he's moving the church hard to the right as he's trying to create a new vision for what the church should be and trying to place itself in society. But he's approaching this as a businessman, as an oil man, as somebody growing his business. He's not approaching this as a churchman. He's not approaching this as somebody who is talking about compassion, the message of the church. He's not providing solace to people in need. We have people who are hungry. We have people who are suffering, marginalized. They are suffering at the harshest ends of cuts and of government policy and of global policy towards them. And I think we really need to actually pinpoint a couple of the crucial aspects here, which is that the idea that immigrants, refugees and migrant communities coming into this country are somehow putting a pressure on the state is because the state is not properly prepared. We have Porters, we had Danny Blanchflower, we had Chris Chadforth. We've got a raft of economics professors saying that the pressure being put on the state here economically, it actually increases job opportunities, it increases services, it increases employability, it adds money to the treasury. So once we untangle some of these myths and this misinformation, we realize that actually this is misinformation, this is disinformation. And once we start peddling stereotypes and fear and prejudice, this is naturally and inevitably going to fuel attacks on immigrant and migrant communities in this country.
Hector, Justin Welby said in his statement that he'd served in the kind of communities that he felt were under pressure. But he's massaging his past a little bit there, isn't he? I mean, he's Eton educated, Oxbridge educated, former oil executive. He's lived a long way from the kind of communities that are most affected by austerity or most affected by immigration.
Well, I can't comment on the gentleman's background, but he has stated that he's worked with a variety of different communities where he's seen issues such as unemployment and poor care occur. And that's what I believe that he's raising here. In counter to the point where he's a representative of the church and the establishment figure, what he's actually done is called for Britain to take in more refugees. He's admitted that the government is rightly concerned about effectively subsidizing people smuggling by taking on so many all at once. But he is there promoting compassion, humanitarian work that Britain is doing in refugee camps surrounding Syria and Iraq, which he has described as absolutely superb.
Mohammed Amin, that's true. He certainly did say that Britain should take more people in. That's a bit of a problem, though, in the way that the press report it, because that's not the headline. The headline is his remarks about people having fears about immigration, isn't it?
The headline was reporting something he said, which is absolutely correct, that many people who have concerns about immigration are not racist. And I have no problem with him saying that.
Wouldn't you like to have seen a headline which said Archbishop of Canterbury says Britain should take more migrants? Because he did say that.
Well, I mean, it's up to newspaper journalists what headlines they choose to write.
And what do you conclude from the fact that they didn't choose to write that one?
The refugee camps in Jordan and Turkey, and that is where we are spending vast amounts of money. We're, I think, the largest or second largest donor to those camps. And I think it's far more cost-effective to maintain and support refugees there than to bring them to the UK.
Yeah, I understand that you don't agree with that. The question was this, though. Given that the Archbishop of Canterbury made two statements, one of which was to say that people who have fears about migration aren't racist, another of which was to say that Britain should take more migrants, given the fact that one of those statements has hit the headlines, the first, and the second one has not hit the headlines, do you think there's a problem in the way this is reported?
Well, you have to ask that question of the newspapers.
No, I'm asking you what your opinion of their decision is.
They've obviously chosen the headline that actually helps to sell the most newspapers.
OK. Mohammed Ensar, what do you think about the press response to this, given that there were two different statements from the Archbishop, one of which said we should take more migrants and one of which said people have legitimate fears? What do you make of the press reporting one but not the other, or predominantly reporting one but not the other?
I think we have a significant problem now in the UK media and across Europe and in the West, in fact, with this Donald Trumpization of the way in which we are dealing with the other, whether they're Muslims or migrants or refugees. The press have been absolutely scurrilous and with the way in which they've reported headlines and stories recently. We're talking about swarms, we're talking about migrants, we're talking about bunches, we're talking about cockroaches. This is disgusting and this is awful, and it's about time we reset the centre of balance over this debate. We have enough space in Europe. We have enough jobs. The Empty Homes Agency says we have 850,000 empty properties in this country. We are a 94% undeveloped nation in Britain and pretty much the same across Europe. We are the richest territory and the richest continent on the planet. We've got enough space. We've got enough jobs. We've got enough money. We've certainly got enough resources. What we don't have is enough love and compassion. And actually, this is where the church is meant to be stepping in, taking a lead. And by not doing it, by peddling racist stereotypes, unjustified fears, economically completely unsustainable, Justin Welby's made a huge error. And I think he has to hold his hands up, apologise, and I think reset this debate, because they should be taking a lead and fighting for the cause which Christ would be supporting at this time, not taking the opposite position.
Hector Marchetti, do you think that's true, that it isn't really the place of the church to excuse or to justify views about excluding people from the country? Hector?
I appreciate that Archbishop Welby is Archbishop of Canterbury and represents the Anglican Church, but this is a personal interview which he himself has done. Now, Mr. Anwar did mention about resetting the narrative and the debate. Well, Archbishop Welby has already done so. Let's consider what was in the headlines, as you yourself were mentioning before. There's been stories about Her Majesty the Queen possibly or allegedly backing Brexit. There's been Mr. Longworth, who was head of the British Chambers of Commerce, standing down amid accusations of foul play by 10 Downing Street. That's been the debate on immigration with regards to the European Union. What Archbishop Welby has done is reset that in terms of what are people's actual concerns that's going on in their communities. And let's bear in mind that he himself has mentioned that communities can do more and be more absorbent.
So are you concerned, I mean, I've had responses from both our other guests on this matter, but are you concerned with the way in which this story was reported? Because he did say two different things, and one of them is getting a lot more airplay than the other.
Yes, I mean, that's the press looking for a good headline by which to sell, admittedly. So the narrative of hope and how Britain can do more, whether with the European Union or with the European continent, depending on the referendum results, that has been not reported as strongly as the headline grabber of fear and racism.
And do you blame the press for that? Is that a wrong editorial decision?
I believe that they've covered this story and other quotes by Archbishop Welby in their stories. The problem has been the headlines, which, of course, are angled to one particular comment.
Mohammed Amin, do you think that he didn't say enough about other drivers of people's fears when people are worried about NHS provision? They are worried about sustainable jobs. They are worried about a housing crisis, irrespective of whether they think those are questions that are related or not to immigration.
If you look at the way that the population of our country has been rising, immigration has been one of the biggest single contributors to the increase in population, which puts pressure on all of the things that you've mentioned, schools, the NHS, etc. And that is a perfectly realistic concern. It's a concern that's held by people from all different ethnic groups. We have to remember that this is our country. We are not compelled to take in everybody from the world who wants to come here.
But surely, given that immigrants disproportionately contribute taxes and skills to the economy, they're a net economic gain.
Some immigrants are a net economic gain. I'm all in favour of taking highly skilled immigrants who will contribute immediately to our economy. We have an obligation to take refugees if they come to this country, but we can do far more for the refugees in Turkey and Jordan than if we bring them to the UK. The last thing we want to do is to encourage more people smuggling, which is why I support the policies that David Cameron has laid down.
Mohammed Ensar, the domestic population in this country is ageing, has probably aged by a decade in the last 20 years. No immigration means very many of the vital services in this country will fall to bits, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is really a demographics issue. The church recognises, they did for their reform programme when they looked at it last year, that they have a demographic time bomb. I mean, in the country right now, and today's Friday, and on a Friday we have more mosque attendees each week than the church has church attendees each week. So the church recognises there's a demographic time bomb. We've got a record structural deficit in this country. We've got an ageing, white, indigenous, if you like, population. Why does nobody address the fact that it's been estimated by the World Bank that there are somewhere between 4.5 and 5.5 million Britons living abroad? That's getting on to 7, 8, 9% of the British population. In context, we've got less than 1% of Americans, about 3% of Spaniards, and a couple of percent of Australians are expats. So for a nation that's gone around the world, we'll be here all week if we start talking about our colonial past and the disgraces of our history, which we should be looking to hold our hands up over. We are then getting in hysteria over immigrants coming to this country who are net contributors to the Treasury. We've got reports from the Institute of Fiscal Studies. In fact, every think tank, more or less, who, other than not on the right, and let's be honest, the Bow Group are essentially UKIPers and Brexiters, so they have a vested interest in trying to peddle some of this hysteria about migrants, and they want to see us leave the EU come the referendum. But, we are desperately in need of migrant communities coming here who will work, who will contribute, and overwhelmingly they do. But this narrative being peddled that Britain is full, Mohammed Amin might say that we don't want to take in unskilled migrants. Well, there was a small 8-year-old boy who came here from Somalia who didn't speak a word of English and became a very good runner. And Mo Farah, as he's now known, if we don't pass the Mo Farah test of people coming into this country, and we set some ridiculous bar that only well-educated people from white areas of the world can abide by, this is a ridiculous state of affairs. Okay, the church, again, should be leading this.
I'm going to have to stop you there. Mohammed Ensar, Mohammed Amin and Hector Marchetti, thanks very much for joining us for that discussion, but I'm afraid that's it for this part of the programme. Do join us for the final part of the show, though, where we'll be looking at the Syrian war as it enters its 6th year. So far, the conflict has claimed the lives of more than 250,000 people and left half the population displaced. That's after this break.